Everyone is talking about the Ukrainian counter-offensive. But if their supporters are excited about the prospect, be sure that the Russian forces are not. With the Russian armed forces having crossed the ultra-important threshold of 10,000 confirmed armored vehicle losses, the question on everyone's lips is how do they keep this up, and more importantly, how do they stop the Ukrainians? Production simply isn't fast enough. As you can expect in wartime, it is often impossible for any military to replenish its losses quickly enough. This is often why armies like the United States keep fields and fields of storage units that can have the mothballs removed and sent to the front. Russia is no different, having established significant reserves of tanks. However, it is clear that no one really knows how many of them there actually are and how many of those are recoverable. Novaya Gazeta estimated there are a total of 8,000 stored tanks. But another source estimated the amount at 10,000, the war reserve. These are a mix of T-72, T-80 and T-90 tanks. However, despite these numbers, the majority of these tanks are lined up tread to tread in outdoor parks, where they've been exposed to rain and cycles of cold and hot that have rusted metal, rotted rubber and degraded sensitive optics. Let's also not forget the vast amount of corruption, where parts are removed from the stored units and sold on the black market, leaving the amount of work required to recover the tanks as unviable. As it stands, Russia might have as few as 3,800 reparable tanks in reserve. A Russian source told Novaya Gazeta that Uralvagonzavod and Siberia-based Omsk-Transmash can restore 600 old tanks a year on top of the 250 new T-72s and T-90s Uralvagonzavod can build. If you consider that Russia attacked Ukraine with an estimated 2,600 tanks, then subtract the 1928 that have been confirmed lost by Oryx, you are left with 672. Then you can add the approximately 850 refurbished and manufactured tanks, leaving them with approximately 1,522 of various models. Let's also not forget that the figure of 850 includes tanks like the T-62 from the 1970s and more recently the T-55. There has been a lot of speculation as to why these tanks have found their way onto the battlefield, but the honest answer is that they are older, simpler, and it's just easier to get them ready without all of the current trouble associated with getting top-of-the-range technology. The gap between Russian tank losses and the production or restoration of fresh tanks isn't insurmountable. For example, during the Second World War, the Soviet Union was able to produce some 1,000 tanks monthly, with many rolling straight out of factories and into action. That level of national effort hasn't been activated yet, and yes, granted, those tanks were far simpler to produce. Also, there may be scope to focus on the production of new tanks and to leave the time-consuming process of restoration where each tank has different problems and requirements. To make matters worse, standards visibly are slipping. Just a couple of years ago, Russian industry equipped new tanks with the latest Sosnayu digital day-night sight, a reasonably modern set of optics that should allow a tank crew to identify an enemy vehicle from 2 or 3 miles away. But the Sosnayu includes Western componentry, and due to sanctions, that has become a major problem for Russia. They either have to clone the parts or use the black market, and that is making the production of these sites almost impossible. As a result, Uralvagonzavod and Omsk-Transmash have begun delivering reconditioned, War Reserve T-72s and T-80s with the low-tech 1PN96MT02 analog thermal sight. The 1PN96MT02 would have been state-of-the-art in the 1970s, but compared to the Sosnayu, it cuts in half the range at which a tank crew can identify an enemy vehicle and completely diminishes the situational awareness of the commander. But as if a sick joke, the Russians have been modifying the storage T-62s with this same sight and sending that to the front as if they are doing the crews a massive favor. It should be noted that numerous captured and destroyed T-62s have been found to have no reactive armor fitted at all, meaning that these units are more like target practice to the Ukrainian opposition rather than a true threat, and it really speaks to the speed with which Russia is being forced to rush tanks to the front to plug the ever-growing gaps. Uralvagonzavod and Omsk-Transmash could speed up tank deliveries to keep pace with losses, but you can expect the performance issues to get worse. But it won't last for long, as there are only so many available tanks in storage, and the sanctions pressure is making the production of new tanks more and more difficult. So, what options do the Russians have? Well, they can double down on their T-62 refurbishment plan. This could be a waste of time and resources as the tanks seem to have very poor longevity, and this smacks of the Soviet practice of rushing basic T-34s straight out of the tank factory and into the fight, with the tanks sometimes being manned by factory workers themselves. Then of course there's the option of investing huge quantities of cash into increasing the production capabilities through the creation of new factories. This is a problem, as frankly Russia is running out of money and their deficit is ballooning out of control. Then of course there is the issue of other costs that need taking care of. Tanks are not the only thing that Russia is currently running low of. Cruise missiles and artillery shells, but to mention too. Another option would be to look for replacements on the open market. That of course will focus the West's rage upon whoever helps them, but there are some out there who simply wouldn't care. Iran, for example, has a homegrown upgrade for the T-72 that it has been slowly converting its MBT fleet with. They wouldn't mind upsetting the West. Then of course there are the North Koreans with their Pakpumho, a locally produced derivative of the T-62 and T-72. Whilst nobody knows for sure, the estimate of available numbers is roughly 600. I have no doubt that North Korea would happily ship some of those for a room full of foreign currency, to keep Kim Jong-un in caviar. Lastly, a wholesale change of tactics, distributing the tanks into penny packet groupings as pure infantry support. This would reduce the numbers required and relieve the pressure on the factories and economy. However, this change in tactics would be impossible to implement due to the Russians' complete lack of operational flexibility. Much has been said about the arrival of the Western tanks and their reason for being there. Obviously the main reason is as a force multiplier for the significant losses already sustained by the Ukrainian army. Let's be clear, the home side never started the war with the same number of effective tank units as the Russians. They have had to beg, borrow and on occasion steal Russian tanks to keep going, and they have done so incredibly well, but Ukraine is aiming for more than a war of attrition, but a war of maneuver. The Western tanks have been designed for just such tactics, and of course without the numbers their force multiplier status makes them invaluable. With the counteroffensive on its way, it's those new Ukrainian armored units that will lead the attack. Despite limited numbers, it appears undeniable that these tanks will cut straight through the current tank force, especially as Russia continues to lose the limited numbers of T-90s that are most capable in stopping them. I would hate to see what happens when a Challenger 2 encounters a T-62. It will be a very one-sided affair and the Ukrainian tank would be on to the next before the Russian crew even knew they were dead. As an example, during the Iraqi War, with an effective range of up to 3,000 meters, the Iraqi T-72s were outgunned by the Abrams 120mm at 4,000 meters. A Challenger, belonging to the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards of the 1st Armoured Division, achieved a kill at over 5,100 meters, the farthest known tank versus tank kill in history. The U-5TS gun on the T-62 wouldn't even manage 3,000 meters. As it stands, the counter-offensive promises to be a horrible experience for the Russian tank crews, short on machines, even shorter on trained crews, and up against Western tanks. You can expect the Ukrainian counter-offensive to break quick and clean through the defenses and achieve their tactical goals quickly and easily. If Russia is going to stop this from happening, they will need to know exactly where the attack will come so that they can muster their defenses in force. I think you will find this has a lot to do with the disinformation coming out of Ukraine. They are currently doing their very best Operation Mincemeat impersonation with the supposed leak of battle plans and various different statements on the time and placement of the attack. Only time will tell. Thank you for watching. Slava Ukraini.